Welcome to the Allied Care Connect podcast, where we explore the people, professions, and perspectives that shape care in everyday life. I'm Valerie, founder of Allied Care Connect and the host of this podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. Okay. Today, I'm joined by Ben Hofs, a certified Canadian counselor with Vital Mind Psychology in Cochrane, Alberta. Ben works with individuals and couples in areas such as relationship challenges, intimacy, grief, life transitions, anxiety, depression, and neurodivergence. In today's conversation, we're going to focus on neurodivergence in relationships. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
All right, let's dive into it. To start us off, can you share a bit about who you are and the work that you do?
Yeah, so I am a man in his 40s who woke up 2.5 years ago going, I want to change. And my wife said, okay, what are we doing? And we really went through a big change. We moved. I went back to school. I finished my master's of counseling and now working full time as a therapist. So that was a lot of change in the span of 2.5 years. I love what I do. I love being in the therapy office, the therapy space. And it's really exciting to find sort of a second chapter to your work life. Um, but I have found what's been really interesting is how much in therapy, my greatest asset is my personal life as well, which I'm sure we'll touch on as we go further into this.
Yes. Okay, what does a uh, counselor do?
Yeah. Good question. What do I do? No. I sit in this room. No. Well, this actually is my
Yeah.
therapy office. Um, I think a counselor's job is to walk alongside people. And I think I say that slowly because often sometimes we might say, oh, a counselor is a guide. And I don't think my job is to walk in front of people because I'm not telling them where they should go or how to get there. But I'm walking alongside them. But the idea is I can maybe provide perspectives and see around corners and give alternate thoughts that they may not have considered. Because often, if you're coming to therapy, you're stuck. You're stuck in
Mhm.
something in some way. And you have run it through your mind, and yet you're still stuck. And so I think a counselor can come in alongside you and start providing alternative ways of thinking and feeling and processing and moving through things. And then the idea is if you can embody some of those, if they resonate with you, now you can unstick yourself,
Mhm.
which is I think the goal of many people who are coming to therapy.
Yeah, awesome. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about neurodiverse clients and couples where neurodivergence is present. How do you explain that work to people who may be new to the topic?
Yeah, so this is a great thing I'll say to a client. Do you know what neurodiversity is? And some have an idea, some have a great answer, and some are like, never heard that word before.
Mhm.
The idea is that many of us have operated under the belief we all have the same type of brain that is sort of built the same way and processes the world in a similar way to everybody else. But that's actually a myth. We have different brains. The idea of neurodiversity meaning different brains. And the
Mhm.
idea that we it might not just be like differences of personality, but fundamental differences of experiencing in sensory inputs, emotional processing, how we even think and conceptualize things. And so the idea is the neurodiversity movement kind of encapsulates some neurodiverse populations like people with autism, people with
Mhm.
ADHD, and things of that nature. And so, um, though neurodiversity actually kind of does include neurotypicals, that would be the language for those who don't experience autism or ADHD. But I am just still a different type of brain. And I think at the core of it is not that there are people with the right brain and that there are people with broken brains. It's like we have to fundamentally scrap that idea, and it's
Mm-hmm.
brain A, brain B, maybe brain C, and they're just different. That's what we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about.
Mm-hmm. It's really fascinating to think about it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Again, like coming back to what you spoke about earlier and what counseling does is that it offers new perspective.
hmm
Right? So, I mean, it comes to relationships. Like, what drew you into specializing in this type of work?
Well, I remember a professor saying, couples counseling is a very different beast than individual counseling. And I was like, isn't it just individual counseling like with two people?
Times two.
Yeah, times two. And then in my practicum, I asked my supervisor, send a couple my way. I want to dip my toes in this.
Mhm.
And it was a very different experience. Um, it's almost like there's not just two more people in the room, there's like three more people in the room because it's like
Mm.
this person, and like this relationship entity that exists between them. And so it's like you have to bring your A game into
Mhm.
that space while holding that my job is not to pick this client or this client, but really to serve that entity, that relationship in the middle. And I kind of love the challenge of it. I mean, and I'm also a big believer in relationships. I'm a very relational human being. I believe that we are meant to be connected to each other,
Mhm.
and that our greatest joy comes from our connections with each other, but also probably our greatest distress comes from those same connections. And so I love entering into that space because with every couple that comes and sits on this couch, there is there is still often a desire to find each other again. And it's
Mhm.
like, okay, let's dig into it and see if we can bring you two closer together. And I love the challenge of it. I really do. And I love watching people find their partner again. It's probably one of the most beautiful things to witness. And I get to like witness it. That's amazing.
Yeah, this is making me emotional too. So thank you for
Yes.
saying it's so lovely. Like there is so much truth to it, right?
Hmm.
So what happens when neurodivergence is present? What are considerations? What are common patterns that you see or challenges?
Yeah, I'll say the number one common pattern, the number one, is that the couple doesn't know it's present. And that's a big place to start, right? Where they come in and I've got these two people and they're sharing their story, and then inevitably they're sharing sort of their patterns, the way they get
Mhm.
into cycles of conflict or the issues that they're coming up with. And I'm like, oh, my spidey sense, my radar is going off that actually one of these people is potentially neurodiverse.
Mhm.
And so, gently and thoughtfully, I'm kind of like exploring that if that is in their awareness.
Mhm.
And I'm fairly surprised at just how often it's not. It's not in their awareness, right? Especially for couples who are probably like 30 years or older,
Mhm.
individuals. It's not a part of, wasn't part of the culture or vernacular to understand yourself in that way. And so then I, it's kind of two things have to happen at once. I have to explain that I'm potentially seeing neurodiversity present in one of the partners, but also that it might be actually impacting the relationship. Because I think people are like, oh, okay, so he has ADHD, so what? And I'm like, oh, that
Mhm.
might actually explain most of what your struggle is working
Mhm.
together because you are fundamentally approaching the world differently. So that would be a big pattern I would see. Another big pattern would be when conflict arises, um, how the two individuals process. This is
Mhm.
a really big one that I see that as a neurotypical individual, I have the ability to hold cognitive thought while experiencing emotions, and I can do that simultaneously. It's why when I get in an argument, I can feel heated, my body's physiologically changing, and yet I've got snappy, retorts and, thoughtful debate, like, and I can go, go, go. Both can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the somebody else who's neurodiverse, often they can either feel emotions or they can be cognitively processing and speaking. They can't really do both at once. There's just
Mm-hmm.
their brain is structured differently. And so what will happen is they'll be like, yeah, we'll get it. I'm trying to have this conversation and my partner shuts down. But
Mm-hmm.
they're interpreting it as my partner doesn't care about me. They're disengaged. They're not invested. It's their way out. They're using it as an excuse. When in reality, that partner feels the emotion flood their bodies, and very literally, their cognitive brain goes offline. And so they come to me and like, yeah, we try to talk through these things, and she just shuts down. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and then of course they're personalizing it. And so it's like stepping back and saying there is something very big at play here. So those would be some, and there are definitely more, and I can get into them, but those would be some of the initial patterns I would see.
Okay. I am quite curious about communication and someone
Yeah.
who may be in the autism spectrum and kind of what challenges as well do people experience to elaborate a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, I have no problem sharing this, and I've talked to my wife about it. My wife is on the spectrum, and so when we first got married, we were running into some pretty significant communication challenges, and that was because we didn't understand that neurodiversity was present at that time.
Mhm.
So since learning that and working through things, a lot more has become apparent. So in terms of communication, what might happen with somebody on the spectrum is um, a couple things. So one, they're bottom up processors versus top down. Bottom up means you focus on the details, right? If you're
Mhm.
building a puzzle, you're looking at each and every individual piece. When you pick that piece up, it's like the puzzle almost ceases to exist, and this is where I'm
Mm.
at. Whereas a top-down processor starts with the big picture and then goes down to the details. So that is fundamentally different starting places. Both have
Yes.
value. They both absolutely have value, but they're very different starting spots. Another communication difficulty would be um, people with on the spectrum struggle to read between the lines. They're not inferring things. If you're implying something, they're likely to miss it. So this is very classic scenario. My wife goes, "So, like, how are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm fine." She's like, "Okay." And I'm like, what? Like, it clearly, like, read my tone, my body language. Like, there was a lot behind that. I'm fine. Just because direct communication is best. And I actually like, so this is like, it's funny as a neurotypical, I'm like, oh, how are they not, how is she not seeing this? And I'm like, oh, but all she's asking for is direct communication. That actually
Yeah.
has a lot of value. And so I have to like, just because I see it one way doesn't make it the right way. And
Mhm.
so direct communication becomes very important. Um, of just speaking very clearly to your wants, to your needs, how you're feeling, because so many couples come in and they're really frustrated, and their partner's like, "You're hurt?" And they're like, and they're so offended, like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Did you tell them you're hurt?" "Well, no, but like they should know." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"No, no. Their best way of knowing how you're doing is you clearly telling them."
Mhm.
So this is the type of thing, and it's hard again when you just have this assumption that everybody processes the way you do. Like
Yes.
I can tell when someone says I'm fine, I'll be like, tell me more. It sounds like you're not fine,
Yeah.
right? and so I assume every other brain I encounter can do that. No,
Okay.
every brain has different set of abilities and strengths, and we approach
Mhm.
things differently.
Yes. Amazing. Thank you. This puts me into my question next is like, where do you kind of see the line between support and self-responsibility for, like you
Mm,
mentioned, for the neurotypical, it's like you have to really redirect, but for the more neurodivergent person, like where's the line? Yeah.
right, right. This is a great question.
This is a
So
asking for a friend.
fair, fair. um, um, I think I'm going to give my best attempt at an answer to this because I think you could ask 10 different people and they would say 10 different lines. So this
Mhm.
is just me taking a stab at this. But I know lots of couples where, specifically, if one of the partners is on the spectrum, has autism, is the partner will complain that they don't look me in the eyes.
Mhm.
They don't make eye contact with me. And now they're personalizing it, of course, right? They don't respect me. They
Mhm.
don't want to be intimate with me. They're 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 elsewhere. They won't give me the time of day by just even looking at me, right? I've heard this
Mhm.
from multiple clients. If it was just support and not accountability, self-responsibility, it would just be like, well, I guess you have to just, you'll never get that, so suck it up, right?
Yeah.
This person struggles because, as we know, people on the spectrum really struggle with eye contact.
Mhm.
It actually makes it harder for them to listen because there's so much stimulus coming into them at once, so much input, that by not looking at you, they actually can listen better. Um, so if it was just support, it'd be like, well, sorry.
Mhm.
Or there might be like self responsibility would be the person with autism saying, I hear what you're saying. Is there any other way I can make you feel connected? What if you put your head on my chest as you talk to me?
Mhm.
And the person might be like, well, that would be really great. I'd feel really
Mhm.
close to you. I could hear your heartbeat and your arms would be around me. And so then it's realizing that it might not actually be about eye contact so much as it is about the desire to connect. And
Okay.
so that's where that's where I would say the line is, in the sense of, you don't have to maybe meet your partner's need in the exact specific way they ask for it, but meet the underlying need.
Mhm.
And I
Yes.
would say that's kind of the line. Does that make sense? Am I
Yes, it makes
explaining that
total
well?
sense. Absolutely. Yeah. When you mentioned the underlying need, and it could be in a different way, not in the,
Yes.
yeah. And it would vary per couple.
Yes, absolutely.
So my next question is, what strengths do you often see in neurodivergent couples that deserve a bit more recognition?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and there's a lot of strengths. I love when couples really start to see each other's strengths.
Mhm.
Where, one partner is like, I love how organized her thinking is. I need that in my life. Like, without her, our family would be lost. Or one partner saying, I love that he or she is so like sensory superpowered, because often people on the spectrum, their sensory is so heightened, their sensory
Mhm.
landscape. And so the things they taste, the things they smell. And so I love the idea that a partner like wants to harness that in their partner. They're like, that's
Yeah.
so awesome. I'm so glad and lucky to have that in my life.
Mhm.
Or if you think, like I said earlier, about the idea of direct communication, I
Mhm.
actually think direct communication, sorry, neurotypicals, but might be the better way of communicating. Just to be really clear about our wants or needs. It could be sort of off putting at first
Mhm.
when, I'm like, hey, loving, darling wife of mine, like, can I give you a back rub? And she's like, no, I do not want to be touched right now. Initially, it's like, whoa, but it's also like, oh,
Mhm.
it's not me. She just isn't in a space to be touched right now. and that
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually have to fill in the gap and create my own story. So when couples learn to harness their differences and accept them, I think they actually can go to some pretty incredible places because they have something to learn from their partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you. I have another question. Like, I probably am neurotypical. I think. And you're right. Like, I communicate more than just words. There's tone, there's body language. And I guess we can talk a bit about more as to how you arrive where you could be more direct as well. I would say personally that's difficult for me as well, and kind of I guess speaking to the self responsibility and accountability piece for neurotypicals. Like, how do you shift? It's really hard to shift from like because you we do person I personalize it. Um, how can I get my head out of it? Like,
I think it's okay to ask for clarification. So
mm-hmm,
when let's say my wife says, no, I don't want to be touched right now, I might have to say, hey, like, oof, like,
mm-hmm,
just want to check because that kind of landed hard on me. Like, is it
mm,
anything I did? Is it something about me?
yes.
And they may say, no, I actually have been wearing this uniform for work for the last 3 hours and I feel like my skin's crawling. But I bet
Mm-hmm.
if I go for a walk, I'd be up for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's like, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that direct communication style can, yeah, it can definitely be a lot. Or they I find people specifically on the spectrum don't always like fluff up their language. They
Mhm,
don't add all the niceties. They just got to get right to the meat of it. Um,
mhm,
which again, I do think is a strength, but it's okay to say, hey, I just want to clarify. You said that very
mhm.
abruptly. Does that mean you're angry at me? And they may look at
Yeah,
you confused, like, how did you get angry from that? I was just telling you what I was thinking.
yeah.
And it's like, I'm just checking. And they're like, nope, I'm not angry. Like, okay, good. So I do think it's okay to if you're feeling off, it's always okay to clarify.
Mhm. Great advice. Great advice. Okay. So for someone that's listening who may be, like neurodivergence might be present in my relationship. What feels most important for them to know?
You're not broken.
Mhm,
You're not. Because I think that's a big thing. I always, something I say to clients and people who are neurodiverse or are who are wondering if they are,
mhm,
I've come to learn that neurodiverse people move through their entire life thinking one of two things, and sometimes switching between the two.
mhm,
I'm too much or I'm not enough.
mhm,
And that fundamentally feels like the neurodiverse person's experience moving through a neurotypical world.
mhm,
Interrelationally, in any arena, I'm either too much or I'm not enough. And
mhm,
I think it's important to understand you're not broken. You're not broken. You have a different brain and you process the world differently. And you deserve the right to understand that you
mhm,
shouldn't be forced to just adapt to the way that neurotypicals do it. There needs to be space for your experience, the way you move through the world, the way you process. And so it's sort of like allowing that for yourself. And if you can start from the place of I'm not broken, I'm not wrong, I am different. That would be the best place to start. And then it would be exploring with a professional. Is this the case? Am I actually neurodiverse? There's lots of tests and quizzes you can do online that
mhm,
maybe don't definitively would say one way or the other. That's if you're actually wanting a diagnosis, you would have to get assessed for that, or
mhm,
either through a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a family doctor. But there's lots of people who self-diagnose. They do the research, they watch the YouTube videos, they read the articles, they talk to other people, and they're like, yeah, this is my experience. This is what is happening for me. So I want to be clear. I don't think that everybody needs to go get medically diagnosed. I think self-diagnose is very valid because you know yourself better than anybody. So trust that. But with those online tests and quizzes, it will certainly point you in a direction. I've done them because I thought, oh, as a neurotypical, like I want to see, and I'm like, oh yeah, I score like low. So my wife and I did it, and she did it, and I watched, and it's like, oh, we are answering things that I actually thought we thought the same about things or experienced things, and I'm like, even watching her do the test, I realized just how different we are.
Okay. Thank you so much for your insight and perspective. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I will say this. If you are wanting to go to couples counseling because one or both of you even are neurodiverse, I really think the best care you're going to receive is somebody who understands neurodiversity. Because the strategies I would give clients would change dramatically if I knew a neurodiverse partner was present. Something, again, referring to something earlier, I wouldn't tell a couple to face each other on my couch and stare lovingly into each other's eyes for 10 seconds if one of them was on the spectrum and found that really uncomfortable. But that might be something that a typical couple counselor might say as a strategy. And so you deserve specialized care with somebody who understands that your brain is not broken, but it is different.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today and your perspective. Can you tell people how they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me. Well, first of all, if you want to physically find me, you can find me in Cochrane, Alberta at Vital Mind Psychology. Come upstairs to the second floor. But digitally, if you want to find me, you can send me an email at ben@vitalmindpsychology.com, or check me out on our clinic's webpage, which is vitalmindpsychology.com.
Yeah. Oh, I just also want to add, I know you have an Instagram page as well.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, sorry. I haven't been in social media for a while. I'm on it now. Yes, I have an Instagram page. I don't know how to tell you how to find me.
Oh, it's okay. I will put it on the show notes.
Put it on the thing. Yeah, I'm embarrassed. I am showing my age here right now. Yeah, I definitely am on Instagram and I'm active on it. I just don't know how to tell you to find me on it.
Awesome. We'll put it on the show notes. Thank you so much for your time today, and I really appreciate your insight, perspectives on neurodivergence in relationships.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Please note that the views, opinions, and experiences shared by podcast guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Allied Care Connect or the host. This podcast is intended for general informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for individualized professional, medical, psychological, or therapeutic advice. Inclusion of a guest does not imply endorsement of all views expressed.
Thanks for listening to the Allied Care Connect podcast. We hope that added value to your day. To learn more about our guests, check out the show notes and visit us at alliedcareconnect.ca to learn more and explore other professionals on the platform. Till next time, see you then.